Please welcome James Montemagno and Jeremy Laval.
Woo! How's Evolve, everyone? Amazing? Yes, accurate.
That's what we want to hear.
It is pretty much glorious. Who's ready for some Universal Orlandos later? All right, I am. I'm just going to go on Harry Potter over and over and over again. Now, there's at least one thing that's extremely apparent to me and to Jeremy, is that material design has taken over the world, not only on Android, but it's spread its beautiful glory all the way over to iOS, whether you like it or not. I love it. Ooh, yeah, they've got a few. Yeah, I love it. And today, we're going to take a look at all material design that Google has to offer and how you can integrate the wonderful world of material design into your Android applications, no matter how you're building them. Whether you're building with Android XML files. How many of you out there build in traditional Android? How about some Xamarin.Forms love? Perfect. No matter how you're building applications, there's something for you today to take away and integrate into your applications. Now, we thought, well, who better yet to tell you all about this material design love than the two biggest Android fanboys at Xamarin, and that's me and Jeremy. I am James Montemagno. Oh, gotta turn the pointer on. There we go. I'm James Montemagno. I'm a developer evangelist at Xamarin, spreading my love all over the world of creating beautiful cross-platform mobile applications. You can find me everywhere. That's my very, very fancy URL that I paid $15 for, Mott's Codes. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter. Now, an interesting story about me and Jeremy. I started at Xamarin 2.5 years ago, and I flew into Boston in the middle of winter, because that's the best time to go to Boston. And I went on our IRC at the time.
Who wants to be in Orlando when you can be in Boston during the winter?
Exactly. It's like Boston, hot and sticky, and then cold and 5 feet of snow. Lovely. So I was like, I get off the tee, and I'm like, is anyone here? And I get two replies, one from Jeremy and one from Alan. And Jeremy's like, I'll take you out, introduce you. Is my very first Xamarin that I ever met. And now I've been on stage with him multiple times. And there's a little bit of a, not only an Android romance going on, but a bromance, if you will, between me and Jeremy. So I won't take too much away. We're too far apart right now. But anyways, I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, everybody. So I'm Jeremy. During my day job, I'm the Android designer team lead. And then I happen to also participate onto something that you guys probably saw this morning, which was the Xamarin.Forms pre-order. Are you guys excited for the Xamarin.Forms pre-order? Excellent, excellent. And so, as James mentioned, we're probably the biggest fanboys of Android throughout the entire company. And so we have seen the evolution of Android throughout its history, pretty much since Gingerbread for me. I don't know when you started. And material design is by far, to me at least, the biggest shift in application development on Android ever.
Ever.
Because there was pretty much nothing before, and then material design came.
I mean, there was Hollow. It was OK. It was OK. But what's interesting is how Jeremy and I have really investigated the Android landscape, and even iOS landscape as cross-platform mobile developers. And it's interesting how many apps we have on our phone. Me alone, I have over 100 applications, which is actually probably a small amount of applications. But what's really interesting is that of all the applications, we started surveying how often people are using them. And we found all these research that on average, 25% of users install and open an application just a single time, and they never return.
And actually, wait, James. It's actually even worse. Let's take a quick poll. How many of you guys, and please be honest, how many of you guys use more than, say, 15 apps a day? Like a normal day, use more than 15 apps. All right? How many of you use more than, let's say, 8 apps? All right, a few of you. Well, the good news is that you're not alone. And if we actually look at the stats, most of the users, when they have any downtime, let's say when you were waiting for your luggage at the airport to come here, they've spent 80% of their time using only 3 apps. Can you imagine that? There's like millions of apps at this stage on all the app stores, and what a user uses most of its time is only 3 apps. So the competition is really fierce.
So we essentially need to make sure that our applications are standing out. And how we do that is through material design and creating great designs for our applications. So this is really, really important. Now, a year and a half ago at Xamarin Evolve 2014, they let us talk for like an hour and a half on material design. It was a brand new concept. Jeremy and I were like, this is the most important thing to happen to Android since Android. I think we're pretty much on the spot. Maybe the support packages, I don't know. Google Play services, pretty good. They're all pretty good, right, at this point. So we're not going to go over the basics here. The entire talk, everything that we did, part 1, part 2 is on YouTube already at evolve.xamarin.com/2014. So you can go and watch that. And again, we're still the biggest fanboys. We're still there. So it's concept implementation. What we want to do is talk about what you can do next. What's brand new? And what's the hotness that you can integrate? And a lot of that comes with the core principles of material design, which is layers. A year and a half ago, Jeremy laid out pieces of paper on top of themselves and the shadows and the intricate things that light does to just pieces of paper and how we can pull that into our applications. So think of your apps as layers stacking on top of each other, whether it's the floating action button or the snack bar and how those move around and what pops. And when we talk about material design, we can't talk about material design without material theming, which is the core of material design. And this is our branding. This is our identity of our applications that Google gave us in the Android framework. So none of this would be possible when we talk about everything later on without material themes. So I'm going to go over the starting point of any material app, which is integrating this. Now,
I guess back when we started, back when we did our talk, so I guess 2 years ago at this stage at the last Evolve, it was just the time when Lollipop, the next version of Android, the first version of Android that brought material design into Android itself, was just out of preview. I think it was the first preview at the time. And so when we talk about all the material design goodness that came with it, as you're probably aware, Google doesn't really update its phones that fast. And at the time, it was even worse, because not only did it update all the phones to Lollipop, but since Lollipop was a preview release, there was maybe like 0.0001% of users that were ever going to use it. And so the main thing that changed since that time, it has been 2 years, is that Google acknowledged that fact at this stage. And so what they did is that they brought all this functionality of material design and packaged it into an easy-to-use way in the support libraries so that anybody could use it, apply it to their app, and also run on previous version of Androids.
And that's where the AppCompat support library comes in. So this is the core of Xamarin.Forms at this point. This is the core of every single Android application that should be started, is understanding AppCompat. And of course, the theming. So AppCompat themes are very important. It's the same principles of material theming. You have your color primary, text color primary dark, and your accent color. Again, your brand identity. I want to point out a few important things, though, with this AppCompat theme, which is that the theme itself inherits from AppCompat. More importantly, though, the theme and the attributes, they don't have that Android colon. What that means, or what's really important for developers to know, is that every single bit of that is now bundled into your application. So when you say resource dot, it's going to include everything in your resource folder and all of the AppCompat stuff. And
it's great because if even Google decide one day to change the way material design works or decide to change something under you, because all of this is included inside your application, until you update your own application, you won't be disrupted by it. It will stay stable during the entire lifetime of the platform.
Yeah, and I thought, of course, theming is great, and I could pull out and I could zip around Visual Studio and Xamarin Studio, but it's more than the theming and how we can use our tools to get there. It's what we can add and start building our application with. So what I want to go over are now the building blocks as we build this up. What controls maybe are you already using today that you could spice up with some material versions of them? And all of that comes with, again, backwards compatibility, which is the big theme of this talk, is that we want to take all that amazing stuff that was introduced in Lollipop and Marshmallow and bring it all the way back to all of our users. And that's where the Android support design library comes, which is kind of like the newest and hottest support library that's out there. And the goal here is that Google comes out with a new operating system. They're like, here's all this cool, fancy, awesome stuff that you can't use because you have to support, I don't know, 99% of all the other users using the platform.
And even sometimes, like when they came with material design 2 years ago, it's a spec document. So it's good for designers, manager, programmer, whatever. But for developers, it doesn't mean anything. What we want is code. And that was the thing that was lacking at the time. We had beautiful screenshots. We had beautiful interaction documents. But it was all text, no code. And that's what the Android support design library brought, is that a lot of node patterns and widgets that are fantastic and that comes in the material design specification are now actionable by us developers, and we can use them in our app at zero cost.
And all of these are available as a NuGet package. And normally when you start a new Xamarin.Forms app, everything's going to be brought in. Same with a traditional Android application. So let's look at a few controls. How many of you are using like an edit text box? Like you're entering some text.
Come on, you will use edit text.
You're all using it, trust me, somewhere. Maybe you have a username or password, and you'll use it sometime in the future. Now, this is pretty good by itself. It's like, hey, you can enter some text, and you have a username hint, which will show up. But of course, you want to spice it up. You could probably have a bunch of labels and text views and things like that, but you want to spice it up. So that's where the text input layout comes out, giving your users context as they start typing. So we can see the username pops right up as I type at James Montemagno in there. And it's simple. You have an edit text. All you got to do is wrap it in a text input layout. There's nothing else you have to do. It handles everything for you. It's super simple. And it even uses the material theming accent color, which is why it's purple there. But I think one of the most important controls that's evolved in a long time that we used to have to write ourselves is probably the fab, the floating action
If I had to pick one control personally that I think represent material design as a whole, it would probably be the floating action button.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that like, there's some people that love it, there's some people that hate it. There's like there's always like very vivid discussion about like, should we use it, should we not use it? Is it covering content, is it not covering content? It goes on and on. But the point is that a floating action button is supposed to represent your application main action. Most applications like one main action, if you have a mail application, could be writing an email, for instance. But also in a funny way, floating action button is probably the hardest widget to implement by yourself, because it has all those shadows, it has circle clipping, it has like fancy positioning and everything like that. And so if you wanted to implement that yourself back in the days, in a backward compatible fashion, obviously, that was the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. All right, card view, probably one of my favorite controls. You have some stuff. Maybe you have some beautiful monkeys. This is my monkeys app. You can get it on Google Play. It's fantastic. You know, who doesn't love looking at monkeys all day? It's the only thing the app does. As an about section, population, you can learn all about these monkeys. And of course, you have some layouts in here. Here's a linear layout for population, for instance. And you probably have this sitting all over your code, a bunch of linear layouts stacking some stuff. You can group it and elevate it with the card view, because circles are hard, but rectangles are even harder, especially when it's that perfect rounded corner. So all you got to do is wrap it in a card view. Boom, done. Add some margins and layouts and give some padding around that puppy, and you're done. Well, around those monkeys, and you're done.
And now you have an application that is on James Montemagno 3 apps that you use 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Monkey app.
Monkey apps, that's all I use. So navigation view, when I started at Xamarin, it's an interesting story. I think Jeremy was on the call. The reason I got hired at Xamarin is because I did an entire webinar as part of my
training, kind of
onboarding to see if I was going to be good at this presentation thing, all about navigation. And navigation view is what it was all about. I'm going to go ahead and replay the animation one more time. So essentially that slide out, right? Makes you feel good. Right there. It's just like you see in the Evolve application with different stuff, and of course your monkeys. So this hasn't changed. This is the drawer layout. What's brand new is that top bar, the navigation view. So essentially, Google has changed this thing about 100 times, and I think maybe they figured it out, except for they changed it again in 23.3. But what I want you to bring attention to is this thing right here, which is this header layout and menu system, kind of the core. And the header view is a header. It's what your users see. So when you open the Evolve Conference app, you'll actually see your photo right up there if you've logged in with your account. And this is any view. You can put anything you want in it. It's quite magical. So just do it. It should be about 192 dp. Just remember that. Cool. Just remember that. Or remember this slide. Someone asked me, why should it be 192? And I said, because Google told me. So, I don't know. It was in their sample. Looks good. Now, we want to put some items in there, and they're just items. Jeremy, how many times have we used the action bar and toolbar menu items?
Probably all the time.
Every application. The best part here about navigation view is you don't have to do a list view, anything custom inside. You specify a menu in a group, and it lays it out for you. Same icons, ripple effects, everything. Better yet, if you want to do grouping, like I did in the Evolve Conference app, you put them into groups. And what's really cool is there's group 1, and then if you want that little line and a title, you put it another item with a submenu underneath it. So it's things that we're familiar with, which I really appreciate.
And what's great, again, is that in the same fashion than all the other widgets, what matters is what what your intention is. Your intention is to provide the content of the menu, not the way the menu is supposed to look like. And you leave that to Google. So like all this interaction, as you said, the line that's separating the elements, that's part of the material design spec, but you don't have to know about it. It's just handled for you. Or the fact that the current active element should have an highlight of the accent color in that case, which is purple.
Done for you.
Done for you. Don't have to care about it.
I love toast. I love every morning getting up, spreading some peanut butter, boom, right there. Or some butter, or mostly peanut butter. Nutella or Nutella. No. So I love snacks, and I love the snack bar. As we can see, the snack bar comes up from the bottom, animates in, and gives us an action. It's just like toast, except for it's a snack bar. You make it, you give it a length, short or long. The beautiful part is that you have an action of undo or anything you want to do, and you just get a callback. Super crazy simple. So when we talk about alerts and identifying our users, the last thing I want to talk about is the alert dialog. And this is gross, and that's better. That's material. There was a no and then a yes.
That must be a lot of work, though, to get that, right?
There's no work at all, really. So this is our traditional alert dialog. I want you to pay attention to that new alert dialog.builder. All I did was slap in an Android support v7.app alert dialog. That's it. You can even use a custom using statement up top to handle that for you. That's all it is right there. That's all you need, which is quite nice. Now, you might be wondering, James, toast, snacks, alerts, when do I use them? Because it's important to know when to use alerts and when to notify our users, because material design, of course, is the design part, but also kind of think about your user workflow. So let's go over it really, really quick. Alerts. This essentially is going to stop your users from whatever they're doing. So if they're doing something, they don't get to do it anymore because it's modal. It's a modal dialog box. So mission critical stuff, and you get 2 actions on there. So use that very sparingly. Next, toast. That's a little toast. Everyone loves toast. Essentially, think of these things as throwaway. They're things that maybe are going to happen or who cares are going to happen. You unarchive something or archive something. It's an action that the user performed that doesn't need to stop their workflow. And for everything else, just use a snack bar. That's it, because the snack bar is awesome. You get an action, and it animates, and it looks sweet. I don't know. Just use that. And that's the catch-all, essentially. So that's kind of the core that I want to talk about when we talk about the controls. But at the same time, the controls are great, but it's what can we do with the controls? And I'm not an animation wizard at all, and Jeremy is. I'm going to kind of let you explain the amazing things that we can do when we actually bring our stuff to life.
That's right. So if you guys know me, you know that one of my pet peeves is animation. I think pretty much every Evolve talk that I have ever done, I've talked in some ways about animations. And so 2 years ago at Evolve 2014, I did another talk in addition to the 2 sessions that we did with James. And the talk was about the animation techniques that were in place at Disney back in the day, or that were invented at Disney Animation back in the day, and are still in use today, actually, by Pixar and even Disney Animations. And I concluded that talk, so that talk is also available online if you want to watch it back. But one of the things I concluded with was that motion and animation had become something that is so natural in an app development process that we were seeing an entirely new class of people, an entirely new class of designers called motion designers, whose only job was to think about the motion of an application. So the only thing they would do during the design process of an application was to think about, oh, we could have motion, not in a bling-bling kind of way, but just, oh, could we improve the workflow, or could we increase the user productivity in our app through motion? And animation and motion has always been a central part of material design specification. Actually, as a matter of fact, if you go to the material design specification today, you'll see that in the table of content, animation is the first section of it.
Isn't that just because they alphabetize them, though?
No,
sure?
because
Okay.
it's the most important.
All right, so it is
Definitely
number 1. Oh, I see. OK.
And so not only was it important back in the days, but because the material design specification is not a fixed document, it's evolving through time. I think every few months, Google will release like a new update, like adding some new patterns, adding some new widgets, or tuning some other things, depending on what they see in the fields. Animation pretty much always got a new update. So they always keep on adding. So it was important back then, but it's even more important today. And the reason, too, is that if you look at a modern material design UI today, everything is reactive, everything is dynamic. All those floating action buttons move around. If the user scrolls, there's like parallax effect. Maybe the title is going to fold into the toolbar. The toolbar themselves are expanding and collapsing. The snack bar that we love so much would move, for instance, a floating action button. So a lot of different things that are happening on the screen that are interconnected with each other. And the thing is, this is what users are expecting today. So the way we were doing static UIs 10 years ago, 20 years ago in our desktop application doesn't work anymore. Because this is not only just for prettiness anymore. This is what users are expecting.
It's animation with meaning, too. So just like the accent color here on the floating action button draws your attention to the bottom right for the most meaningful action, that animation of the snack bar, you may be looking at the top now, catches your attention. Hey, something is happening over here. That's what animation can do.
And so before continuing, I want to tell you a little story. A few weeks back, I live in an apartment, like a lot of people. And a few weeks back, the management company of my building decided to change all the locks in the building.
Spring cleaning, maybe? Just change your locks for fun?
Exactly. They didn't give us any reason. But anyway, they changed the locks. And so I figured, that's fine. I'll probably get my new key, before I actually get into any trouble. I didn't count on my landlady being away and not receiving the key on time. And so when the day actually came that they changed the lock, I found myself trapped into my own apartment. I had nothing. So I couldn't leave my place because I had my apartment door key, but I didn't have the building key anymore. I was trapped inside my own place.
Good thing for Postmates and Amazon Prime.
And so, thankfully,
yeah,
I could have starved in there.
Thanks, Uber Eats. Appreciate that.
And so when I was in that situation, I got reminded of a few wise words that I just heard a few weeks back in a pretty, actually good movie. I'm an engineer. If there is a guy on Mars that can survive being stranded in there and make it back, I can probably also do something about my key situation. Because after all, in each apartment, because you don't want, you're not a savage, you're not going to go down the stairs to open the door to someone. So what you have, what pretty much every apartment has, is a buzzer. And the buzzer is just a button. So maybe I can do something with that. And again, if someone stranded on Mars can make it back, I can probably do something with my buzzer.
Especially you.
Yeah.
Maybe not me, but especially
pretty much on the
you.
same level, actually.
Yeah.
I think I should just work on NASA.
Science on Mars, buzzer.
Yeah. I should just work on NASA. I think this is my next job.
I think they're in there.
And so, in all its glory, this is the solution I came up with.
That is a good-looking piece of hardware.
Right?
I'm not.
It has everything you want. I mean, remember, I was trapped in my place. I couldn't go outside to the hardware store to do something, so I just need to scrap everything I had in my apartment. So it has everything you want. It has tin foil. It has duct tape.
Is that like a mobile phone? What is that thing?
Yeah.
It's like a Nokia.
But you know what the best thing about this is?
What's that?
It actually works.
Ooh.
So now I had a system. And this system is here in a better detail. So what I did is that I took away my buzzer. I put two wires inside of it. One wire onto the tinfoil, another wire onto a tinfoil that's on an engine. On an engine, there is a solar panel. And then what do I do to activate that solar panel? I just use a phone flashlight. There we go. Now I have a system. I just need to control the flashlight with another app, and I can open my door. Perfect. I'm not trapped anymore. So now I needed to make an app. And so I was pretty pleased with the results. And my door worked really fine. Since then, I got my keys, so I'm not trapped anymore.
It would be pretty terrible if you had to bust it out every single time.
I know. And I may have replaced my old system.
6 months later, I don't know about your landlord. Terrible.
We haven't heard from him since.
Yeah.
Since I replaced the entire thing that you saw with like a Raspberry Pi system, so it's much more with Azure IoT, so a bit more corporate. And so I thought, I have this app now, so how can I bring that to the mass market? How can I maybe sell this application? Because it's great right now, and it's adopting all the things that James talked about. It has the material design UI using support Compat. So it looks pretty all right.
It's beautiful.
But me being like someone who would like to add motion, oh yeah, and the feature that I added too is that because now I had a proper system, I also wired in the buzzer, the actual buzzer sound, so that if someone like James wanted to come in, I would get a notification directly on my phone, and I could decide to open it or not. And so this was great, this worked, but I mean, there's a couple of things that I could do to add motion. How can I add motion to this application now? It's a functional application. It has all the data layer and everything, but how can I add motion, meaningful motion to this application? So I decided to do three goals. The first one was, I have a notification. People that use notification on Android are used to the fact that you can swipe away notification if you don't care. Typically, if someone, maybe like James, comes to my door, maybe I don't want to let him in, so I could just swipe him away.
Oh.
Or, I'm sorry, James,
Okay.
but if you bring pizza.
Oh, okay. If I bring
Might let
pizza,
you in.
all right.
Second, material design is all about curve motion, so I could add some curve motion into there. What I would have loved to do is that once the notification came, my floating action button, which lets me open the door, is still at the bottom. I don't want it to be quite there. I want it to be inside my notification frame. And then finally, even that floating action button is a bit sad. I mean, it's a static image. I don't like that. Let's bring a little bit of joy also to that poor little floating action button. And so let's see what the apps look like now that I have added all those improvements in. Can we switch to my
I'll
computer
jump
here?
over to the demo machine. Cool.
There we go. Let's see if this is still working. Yes, fantastic. All right, so this is my app. And the funny thing is that I actually have it wired to my place, so I hope none of my neighbors are actually here, because they're going to have
It's a live demo, doing it live.
This is a very live
Jeremy
demo.
Lee lives in 421 East. No, I don't.
Don't go to my place. It's in Boston, remember, it's cold. All right, so let's imagine that James wants to come to my place. He's buzzing the door. I get my notification here.
Oh,
did you
that
see
was
that?
in real time. Wow, that was impressive.
That was in real time. So what we saw here is that when the notification came in, I had first a little bit of shadow added to it, and then my floating action button came all the way up to the notification in this very nice curve motion. And then, as I say, maybe I don't like James right now. Maybe
Yeah, so maybe I'm like, hey, Jeremy, do you want to do some work tonight?
Not really.
Oh, okay, I'll go home.
Sorry, dude.
I'll go find Starbucks and work from there.
And
Oh,
I
there's
A nice functionality. I can even apologize directly from the app.
Look at that.
I don't even need to think about it. So let's say no.
You completely ignored this person. I appreciate that. All right, so I'll try it again. Perfect. That was a beautiful animation. I like that. But I brought a pizza this time, and we can jam on some code, crush it a little bit, crush some code, crush some pizza.
All right, that sounds a bit better. I guess I'll let you in. And so look at this. Little bit of animation to floating action button. Much happier.
Do it one more time.
All right.
The button, bottom right, comes to life, and then he lets me in because he's amazing in that.
And there we go.
So kind of imagine taking, so when you leave here, I want you to reimagine your applications to see, like, how could you take something as a list view and really animate it to life. So let's switch back over to the slides really quick. Maybe.
The app is so great that they don't want to switch back.
Yeah, like, whoa, amazed. Maybe. There we go. Cool.
There we go.
And I really wanted to focus in on this, because this is probably the most amazing, beautiful animation ever. I don't know how you did that. It's beautiful.
And so what's great is that you may be wondering, like, how much work was it? I mean, this was a lot of custom code. There was a lot of custom movement in there. And back in the days, it was definitely a lot of work to implement all of this. But thanks to all the support libraries and new support libraries, including support design that we just saw, and then 2 new support libraries that actually came out a few weeks ago, support VectorDrawable and support AnyMiniVectorDrawable, which are pretty self-explanatory. And their counterpart, because we have an amazing team at Xamarin whose only job, and it's basically one person that I want to shout out to, Jonathan Dick, whose only job is essentially to take all the updates that Google release, and these days they are releasing a lot of updates, and providing you guys with bindings, great quality bindings, almost pretty much, like, I think he manages to do it maybe in a day, maybe on the same day sometimes. And this is important because, as we said, even though Android doesn't update that often, those support libraries, you can use them right away. So this is important that you can get access to them as fast as possible. And so there's 2 things in those support libraries that I want to highlight. And those were the 2 things that I use in my app to implement all those new motion systems that I showed you. The first one is coordinator layout. And coordinator layout is something that it's a new widget that's part of the support design package. It's a widget that's only in the support design package. Because if you're familiar with support libraries, you may know that a lot of support libraries are just bringing more recent version of widgets back in a backward compatible fashion. But in the case of coordinator layout, it's a widget that's only in there. And then the second one is the well app name AnyMiniVectorDrawable, which was responsible for the little fab animation that you saw at the end.
Oh. So how many of you actually have integrated the coordinator layout into your application? How many of you know what the coordinator layout system is? Exactly, because it's kind of one of the most confusing, complex things that Google has ever released in Android, but also one of the most important. And now we are kind of almost running out of time, and I want to do Xamarin.Forms stuff. Jeremy's going to try to explain the magic of the coordinator layout system, which I figured out by myself with like no documentation in just a few minutes.
All right, we'll see if we can power through this.
Which is actually part of the support design NuGet. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a new support design. So it's in support design, as I said. It's a container that's very similar to frame layout. So you probably have all used frame layout. If you want to lay over objects, typically if you have a list view and let's say you want to lay over like a floating action button on top, you would use a frame layout. So coordinator layout, exactly the same thing. The one key difference is that coordinator layout is supposed to be something that coordinates, as the name implies, everything on the screen. So it doesn't make sense to have more than one. And the goal is that coordinator layout becomes the top-level elements of your entire layout. And when I say your layout, I mean the entire layout, including toolbar, including app bar layout, etc.
Yeah,
so that
yeah, you can kind of think of it. Remember the drawer layout that I showed earlier with the navigation stuff? That was the root. It's the root of your application. So what we're seeing here is a coordinator layout with every single thing inside of it. So you have the app bar layout with the toolbar inside of it, with the view pager, with the floating action bar. And when there's really something crazy, this was pulled from one of your applications.
So this is directly from my application. And yeah, when we saw that, like we didn't plan on it, but when we saw that, we were looking over the slides and we said, isn't that funny? There's actually no framework class in there. This is all support package.
We are literally using nothing in Android at all, but everything at the same time. It's amazing. Yeah.
And this is working all over all Android versions.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And so coordinator layout does a couple of different things. It does decor, in the sense that like because it spans the entire screen, including the status bar, but still the material design specification tells you that you can color your status bar to some other colors. It can do that for you. It also has some code to the positioning, so it can it lets you support material design key lines, placement key lines, or it also lets you pin objects to some other objects. So in the samples that you saw before, in the videos that you saw before, when the floating action button was anchored to the toolbar, and when the toolbar was expanding and collapsing, the floating action button was following it. So you can do that just by simply saying, I want to anchor this floating action button directly to the toolbar.
It's kind of like a pin, right? You can place a pin for the positioning. So I want to pin that thing to the bottom or the top of that other guy or gal and just like move it up, which is cool.
And this is a free interaction because you don't have to write any code to synchronize the two. This is going to be done for you. And then the last part that it's responsible for, and that's the one I want to focus on here in the few minutes that we have left, is that interaction part. So on an Android application, we have it's raining events all the time, be it touch, as we saw earlier, scrolling events, fling gesture. There's a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity here is that because coordinator layout, as I said, is your top-level element, it is the first one to receive all those events because it's at the top. And so there's an opportunity here, and this is what coordinator layout does, is that it will intercept all those events for you and give you an option to implement some code on top of them.
Yeah, I cannot tell you how many times I've integrated and like done some interface just for a scroll event on this one scroll view, and done this thing to have no reusable code at all. And I think that's what always been a trouble and a problem for Android developers. And this is really what solves it with behaviors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so Coordinator solves this with behaviors. So behaviors are little pieces of code. Yep. Little pieces of code that contains only the code that has to do with, let's say, touch events or a specific class of events. And the goal is that you can then take that behavior and apply it to anything you want. So let's say if you wanted to do the same type of, let's say, swipe to dismiss pattern on a button or a text view, back in the days, you would have to do a custom class for both of those. But now, thanks to this behavior system, you can just do it once and then attach it dynamically to whatever you want. And it doesn't matter.
It's quite lovely, yeah.
And so it will proxy everything to you. It proxies actually a ton of stuff to you. You can customize drawing, can customize layout. You can, as I say, customize all the touch, layout, scroll, whatever events. Anything that comes onto a view, you can customize directly in the behavior. And then one of the most interesting part of it is that it has also this view dependency system. So what this lets you do is that you can say, I want a specific view to be dependent on another. And so everything you saw in the videos where an element would move or change size or disappear based on like an external event, let's say the user scrolling, all of that can be implemented using behavior, using that view dependency system. And so, for instance, this is a simple behavior. This is the behavior that I use actually in my app to swipe to dismiss when someone rings the door.
Yeah, has anyone ever implemented swipe to delete or swipe to do anything? It's about like a bajillion lines of code for no reason. That's all the code.
I think this was I think it was first introduced in Gmail back in the day, so that you could swipe away your email if you wanted to archive or delete them. And basically, everybody wants to use that. It's so natural. It's so natural to swipe away something you don't want, including James ringing at the door sometimes, if he doesn't have any pizza. This was very complicated to do. I mean, imagine it's like you have to implement a custom view, you have to override on touch or maybe on intercept touch. You have to accumulate events yourself. You have to handle also fling by using a velocity tracker, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and that's all the code now.
And no, that's all the code. Because Google is now providing, of course, since they have the behavior system, they're also providing default ones. And so one of those default ones is this swipe to dismiss behavior. Here, I'm only doing a subclass because I want to set a few parameters to it. But the core of it, the core of this untouched logic, is now contained inside that swipe dismiss behavior. And so using behaviors then is super easy, because once you have your behavior, you can just set it directly inside a layout by using one of the layout parameters of coding a layout, or you can set it at runtime. And at that point, it will be registered in, and the actual thing that you want registered will be working. And so that's exactly the code that I set up on my notification frame, so one line of code, and boom, I got swipe to dismiss behavior into my app. All right, so let's move on very quickly to AnyMiniVectorDrawable. So AnyMiniVectorDrawable, so those have been backported. So those were introduced in Lollipop, back when Lollipop was unveiled. And so they were backported into this support package. So this is very new. This came out like 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, how many of you are using like vectors, like SVGs, or want to use SVGs? How many people want to use SVGs so they don't have drawable XXXXX HDPI? Now you can.
Yep.
Yeah.
How many of you have like all those drawable folders with LDPI, MDPI, HDPI? We don't know how many X they're going to put in front of HDPI anymore. So yeah, thanks to this and thanks to the density-independent vector drawable, you can actually know it's essentially it's an XML file that is very close to SVG. And so what that means is that all your assets, all your icons, the simple ones usually, the monocolor ones, you can now just have them into a single file. And automatically, depending on the platform you're rendering to, doesn't matter if it's a watch, doesn't matter if it's a phone or a TV now, it will be crisp and clear because it will be rasterized for you at the right density.
Yeah.
And the good thing is that you only have one file. So you're cutting down on all the size in your APK by removing all the other binary files. And because it's a text file, it can compress very well too. And so what AnyMiniVectorDrawable does is that it ties in this vector drawable part with something that I'm very familiar with. If you have done any animation on Android, recent animation on Android, you should know what an object animator is. And so what AnyMiniVectorDrawable does is that it ties in together those two pieces to let you craft animations directly inside a vector by addressing every part of the vector, which is what I did in my floating action button.
Yeah.
And so what's great about it is that because VectorDrawable is so close to SVG, as a matter of fact, they use the same path syntax, so they use the same type of definition. And because you designers, or if you are a designer, you must love SVG. That's every editor in the world exports to SVG. So what you can do is that there is no website like this one, and we will push the site so you can get access to that. There's this website where you can literally just drop an SVG file, and then it will work.
And you're done. You get beautiful things like this.
And so there's a lot of things you can do with that. The first thing is that if you use VectorDrawable, know that Google has released the entire icon set of material design freely for anybody to use. And so if you go to google.com/design/icons, all those icons are also available in an SVG format. So this is super easy. You just download it, put it into the website that I showed earlier, and bam, you have an asset that you can use on all platforms that's going to look crisp and clear, and you don't bloat your app. And then because it's AnyMiniVectorDrawable, you can do a lot of different things. You can do custom spinners. So here in that case, I have a custom Bluetooth-based spinner. This is completely VectorDrawable based. And then why not, like if you like cats, if you want the spinner to be a cat.
I like monkeys better, but cats are
Spinners are kind of boring at this day. So if you have a spinner that's a cat that's closing his eyes, that's better. And then what's really cool, but I'm tuning a little bit because this is not yet available in the support package, but I still wanted to show it to you.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. I put a lot of requests in the bug tracker, so hopefully they're going to go to that. Is state transition. So what's amazing here is that we always had state transition on Android. So if you have a checkbox, if you have any radio button or anything like that, state transition always were in Android. So that means that if you check the box, the widget itself will have a new state of checked instead of unchecked. And based on that, you could already change drawables. So when you tap on the checkbox, the check mark change they don't actually set a new image. They set a compound image that has one image for the state checked and one image for the non-checked state.
Yeah.
And so what state transition done is that it allows you to animate those changes. And you can do pretty nifty stuff. The cool example is always the play pause button. So instead of just switching to the play or pause icon as you type on it, why not morph it together?
It's the subtle things. It's a subtle touches.
It's a very subtle thing, but it's something that is very pleasing aesthetically. And then you can craft very complicated things. Like the example that I have below is a radio button that has a custom drawable on the side. And so based on the value of that radio group, I do completely different animations, switching scenes and stuff like that. So all the code for those is available on my blog. We'll publish the link at the end. So definitely check it out. It's amazing.
Cool. Now, before we do that, we want to switch to the demo machine. Hold on. Because there's one thing that Jeremy forgot to demo before I go to Xamarin.Forms. I'm going to go over by 2 minutes because it's totally worth it. Can we switch to the demo machine? How many of you guys are using the Android Designer built into Visual Studio or Xamarin Studio? A few, right? What's the most annoying thing? Like if you go to your source here and you're like, oh, I need to use anything in an AppCompat or my own custom controls, and it looks like this, and then you like go to the designer and you're like, oh, it's boxes. Well, now not anymore. Not in the alpha channel. Fixed it. You're awesome and team. So now this is completely custom drawn, and that really deserves a round of applause. That's awesome. These are support packages, your custom controls, anything. All right, go back to slides. I just wanted to make sure you guys saw that because we didn't talk about it. Nina hinted, but that thing is amazing. All right, cool. Slide time, Xamarin.Forms time. Because I have been doing a lot of material design in Xamarin.Forms. I had people come up to me with the Evolve app, and they're like, did you make this in Forms, or was it traditional? And I said, that means I did it right. Because you had no idea. It was amazing. And Xamarin.Forms, to me, has a great opportunity for material design, and they've done a lot. First, AppCompat. It's completely integrated. So all that theming stuff, everything that we just talked about is integrated now. And this is my Hanselman.Forms application, which is fantastic. Love Hanselman. It's really simple. Essentially, let me get a little bit closer to the pointer. There we go. Essentially, it's the same theme, same attributes. All you have to do is inherit from Forms AppCompat activity, and you add some new resources. When you do File New, it does it all for you. So if you don't know where it's to go, just look there. And this is what it looks like right here. Forms AppCompat, and then you see that toolbar resource and tab layout resource. You just add that, and you're done. And that's going to stylize your entire Xamarin.Forms application. When we talked about animation, there may have been a very subtle animation that I added at 2 a.m. one morning because I was like, it's not animated enough. Was that little tiny heart. I looked at all the apps in the App Store that I had on my phone, and no one did anything except for Instagram. When you double tapped, it was like, and I was like, I got to do that. That code is a favorite image. I did a custom image, and I added a tap gesture. So whenever you tap that image or tap that button, I go and I say, grow, this little code right there. It's 2 lines of code, and I scale it and outscale it. There's all these animations built into Xamarin.Forms that are going to scale across all different platforms, but something really subtle. So just don't let that static image sit there. All right, cool. Card view. How many of you would love card view in Xamarin.Forms? How many of you are like, how did James do that? It's built in. It's been there forever. How many of you have a stack layout? Everyone has a stack layout. Just wrap it in a frame. Done. It's a card view. Did you know that? I didn't. Jason told me. He's like, I have all these custom renders. Like, you know, I did that already 2 months ago. And I was like, whoa. So it's been there since 1.5. Jason Smith. It's been amazing. So if you have any stack layout, wrap it inside of a frame. Now, there is one downfall. On iOS, see how I have a little on platform there? The shadow is horrifically horrible on iOS, so turn it off. Just boom, off. Only on Android, put the drop shadow. It's super awesome. Cool. Now, here's what I want to get to when I get to my demo. Did you see that slide that Miguel had that said, hey, you could take any control and shove it in a Xamarin.Forms app? That sounded pretty awesome. So I said, man, wouldn't it be cool if I didn't have to write all these custom renders for, like, I don't know, Jeremy's super fancy floating action button and do this new embedded native control? So I took 5 minutes this afternoon, and I did it. So let's take a look on the demo machine really quick. So I'm going to go ahead really quick. I'm just going to show you the code. This is a native test. And we have full documentation on this puppy. So here's what I'm going to do. Jeremy, I stole his code. So he did write a custom control already. This is his control. I took it from his buzzer droid application. Nothing. I added some resources here. So all of his animation, vector drawables, everything like that. This is inside that application. Then what I did is, it's literally file new. I'm going to make this how do you zoom this? How do you zoom this thing?
You can just
Oh my goodness. You can tell I'm an evangelist. I'm like settings, preferences, bigger text. Look at that. Cool. So I'm inside of a shared project, and I'm just doing some conditional compilation. So here I am. Up top, we can see I'm using Xamarin.Forms Platform Android. This is going to give me extension methods on any layout. And I bring in my native test Android and my Android namespace. Down here, I'm creating my floating action button, this checkable floating action button. It could be any control that you want.
Like anything that we talked about.
Anything we talked about. So everything I talked about, spice this puppy up. And I'm creating in the code behind, or you could even inflate a layout if you wanted to. And to get the animation, I added a blank click handler, because that's how he implemented it. And that's it. We can see I'm accessing my Android resources, because I'm in a shared project. This is your standard Hello Xamarin.Forms, but I have a native test. I have a stack layout. And down here, I say, hey, if Android, add that fab, and then give it a little bit of margin. That's it. So now we can take a look at the application. There it is. This is a Xamarin.Forms application. Literally added 3 or 4 lines of code. I can press it. Boop. In Xamarin.Forms.
No cheating.
It's unbelievable. That's so cool. I don't know, that blows my mind. And it took me like 5 minutes to do. So really now, truly, and this is in the 2.3.0 preview. You can actually go and do this with any of your native controls that we've been talking about down in there. So let's go back to the slides as we wrap this up in our last few seconds. So no matter what you're using, traditional Xamarin.Forms, the worlds collide with this new embedded resource, embedded native control stuff. But think about, what is that one little thing over there that just needs a little bit of attention? What can I do that Jeremy and James on stage have said, can I just spice it up a little bit? Can I take that edit text and just spice it up a little bit? Can I add a little bit of animation? Add some material design into your applications. You can find all these resources, including all of Jeremy's, not only the Raspberry Pi code, but this Android application. That Monkeys application, which does everything under the sun when it comes to material design, including Google App Indexing, which I'll be talking about tomorrow, which is on my GitHub. And of course, everyone most likely wants the Xamarin Evolve source code. Don't worry, I am working hard every single moment to get that open source and check our blog or come to my session tomorrow. And with that, follow us, and thank you guys so much.
Thank you.